So here's what we're going to do. We're going to break into small groups. We're going to have a couple of different breakouts, but it's going to be with your chapter. And if you are a chapter of one, which we have that, we're going to have you break down collectively. So Pat's all over that. Here's what we're going to do. The first breakout is this. We're going to process and audit this past year. So you're going to have 4 topics of conversation. I want you to hone in really on the first 2 in this order. You're going to hone in on these first 2. We're going to come back together. We're going to talk about 3 and then 4. So here's what I want you to talk about. We're going to give you 15 minutes. In your 15 minutes, you're going to cover both of these things. What's working? I just want you to have conversations with your chapter. What's working? What's working? Have that. List it. And then when you're done with that, I want you to transition to, well, what isn't working? As growth opportunities. I want you to identify what isn't working. So you're going to have 15 minutes. You're going to break into small groups. You're going to answer these 2 things. What's working? What isn't? That's it. Then we're going to go into these 2 line items. When you come back, we're going to talk about it. We're going to break again. This is us processing and taking an audit of where the chapter is before we get into actually the planning when it comes into the 3rd hour. You with me? I will see you in 15 minutes. In those 15 minutes, what's working and what isn't. See you later. Now, you just had a conversation. In your conversation, you identified, so what's working with our chapter overall? And then you also identified, well, what isn't. Right? So what's working and what isn't? You've had that conversation. You had 15 minutes. You got connected, all of that. Okay, so now we've had some of that. Now let's go to the next layer. The next layer is this, is just by a show of hands, and that can go in your reactions. You can give me any reaction that you want, How many of you, if you don't give a reaction, means that you don't deal with this at all. How many of you, do you ever deal with anyone who complains? Do you ever deal with complainers at all? Anybody? Yeah, right. Alex is like, hell yeah, I do. Callie sighs like, yes. Exclamation point. Tucker's got the exclamation point. Yeah. What's interesting is, okay. So now, complaints. So here's what's really interesting. I want to talk about complaining for a hot second, and we're going to go back into small groups. So let me show you, this is my own facilitation technique and trick when it comes to actually dealing with a complainer. So complaining, Xavier is complaining above or below the line? Below the line. That's right. Complaining is below the line. And we know that when someone is below the line, you kind of lost them, at least for a hot second, right? So here's a facilitation trick. So I got Tate Reed. Tate Reed, I can just see your name. So what up, dude? You don't have to come off. I'm just going to use you. You're welcome. I can see your video. I see a flag over your shoulder. Dude.
Yes, sir.
Hey, where are you living?
I'm in Springfield, Missouri.
What chapter is that? I know it's
Ada, Missouri State.
Missouri State in the house. Did that used to be Truman State University?
No, we still have Truman up north.
You do? What? So Missouri State, was that a renamed institution like Northwest Missouri
State?
Yeah,
it used to be SMST, maybe something like that.
Okay.
Southwest Missouri State.
Yeah. Southwest Missouri State. Okay. So Tate, let's assume that Tate and I are having a conversation and Tate is complaining, right? Tate would never complain, right? He's solutions focused, but Tate is complaining. And so if I'm hearing this, couple of things. When we work with a client, I'm not suggesting you do this, but I'm going to teach you a little bit more of what we do. So let's say Tate is working with us as a client, and in his orientation, when doing his coaching work with us, I would say, hey, Tate, here's your scope of work. This is going to be 2 years. We're going to meet, once a month, twice a month. Here's how we do it, laying that all out. He's like, yep. Got it. Here's how we're going to do invoicing. We're going to send this to the business, this, that. And he's like, yep. Got that. Okay. What do you have? He teaches me what he's heard, right? So we're deploying all of that. And then I say this, hey, every time that we have a scheduled session, bro, I'm going to allow you to drive the BMW for 5 minutes, up to 5 minutes. And Tate typically goes like, what? What are you talking about? The BMW stands for bitching, moaning, and whining. So Tate, when we connect, if you're complaining and you want to, I'm going to be like, hey, bro, you got it. You're on the clock. You're driving the BMW. Have at it. I'm going to hold the space for Tate. I'm going to be there. I'm going to listen. I'm going to hold that space for you, dude. Whatever he says, this is in a judgment-free zone. I'm going to do that. And then the reason why I put that boundary of 5 minutes is this, just I'm curious, and by a thumbs up, have any of you ever been in a conversation with anybody where they're complaining about something? You don't have a time limit when it comes to the boundary. By the way, you could just mute your phone if you're not on live. If you don't put a boundary of time, have you ever had somebody go and they're complaining about something and they go for an extremely long period of time and they end up recycling the same narrative over and over again? Have any of you ever experienced that before? Ever? Isn't that fascinating? Right. So if I'm working with Brandon, right, and Brandon we typically have one complaint. I have time to hear that once because now we need to get to solution. I have actually gone, even when I worked at SIGEP staff, there was a volunteer that would complain all the time. I created a safe place for him to share. So before I left staff, I ran this little experiment. How long is this volunteer going to go? And I didn't put any time frame on it. He was 2.5 hours. 2.5 hours. And you know what? He really only got maybe like 1 to 2 topics, but he ended up recycling them over and over and over again. So when working with Tate, I would just say, hey, Tate, you're driving the BMW, you have 5 minutes. No one in our space has ever gone longer than 5 minutes ever with that boundary. And so now when Tate is complaining, or when you experience someone complaining, here's the trick. You would say, now we have to think about it. What's behind every complaint? So in your chat field, I want you to write the word, what is behind every complaint? Write that down right now, everybody. Whatever you got, take a guess. What's behind every complaint? An issue, misunderstanding, missing expectations, truth, problem, expectations, miscommunication, dissatisfaction, frustration, excuses, misunderstanding, fear, judgment, stress, fatigue. That's a great one, right? Ego, dissatisfaction. Yeah. I mean, all of that is right. All of that is right. So here's the thing is, as a leader, we need to get in front of that, and we can't guess what that actually is. Here's what it is. What's behind every single complaint is a request. It's a request. So if I'm working with Carter and Carter's complaining to me about something, right, and I want to kind of nip that in the bud because I want to get to solutions focus, which is being above the line, I would say, hey, Carter, so what's your request? I have now forced, by that question, I have forced Carter to go above, at least in the moment, to go above the line, to articulate being solutions focused and sharing what his request is. I have seen so many teams, so many businesses trying to guess what the client, what the person, what the employee's actual request is. I'm not going to guess shit. I'm going to go straight to the source. Hey, Carter, well, tell me, what's your request? By the way, when they guess, oftentimes they're not right. So when you're working with a chapter member, I used to call him Johnny Spit Cup. Do you ever have any of that? That's the dude like in the back of the meetings that's got a huge lipper in. He's spitting. He's just naysaying everything, right? That's typically that person. I don't know if you still experience that to this day, but I sure as hell did back in Kalamazoo and around 2000. So tell me, what's your request? So if I'm working with Wayne, I'd be like, hey, Wayne, so what's your request? Oh, Blanck, I don't have a request. No, I just listened to you go on for about 5 minutes. There's something there. Let's go on. Tell me what that is. I'm putting Wayne on the spot in a loving way, but Wayne needs to articulate what's behind that complaint. What is his actual request? And I need to hear that out. So all of you identified a little bit of a complaint. Now, it wasn't bad. It wasn't malicious, but you identified what isn't working. And I hope that you have a list of what isn't working. You have 15 minutes. In your next 15 minutes, I want you to do this. I hope you have a list of what isn't working. I want you to transition all of those into a request, all of them. 15 minutes. I'll see you in 15 minutes. Transition all of your what isn't working into a request specifically. I'll see you in 15 minutes. So you had conversation about what's working, what isn't. You transitioned what isn't into your request. So there's two major lists that I really want you to think about is what's working in your requests. That's action-based, right? We want to keep what's working. Obviously, we want to grow on it, sure. And then those requests, now we have them.